Okay then, so now we're going to start to do some continuity tests on the tender. You can see where I've got the wire attached to the gray, so the gray lead here, and that goes to green and one probe, and the other probe is the red probe, and the setup on the meter now to do a continuity test, which means it just makes a noise, right? I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it makes a noise when there's continuity. So we're going to do a continuity test between the gray lead then and notice that truck works, right? That truck works, this one doesn't. And orientation, right, is this is forward, right? That's forward. So the right-hand truck, right, right-hand wheel, which this one has, is kind of squeaky, but this picking up on the right-hand side means that in fact that the gray lead here is plus. Alrighty then, we're back to putting in a decoder. And from the last video where we left off, this engine, we removed a decoder from this engine, and we're going to put a Soundtraxx decoder in it for that the customer would like. So we're just about ready. We have gone through and figured out where all the wires were and what colors the wires were, and we're ready now to cut some of those and to solder them on to the decoder. So let's get into that. Okay, and if you remember from our paper, right, we had gone through this list. We knew it was a P2 type. And I've crossed these out and relabeled them, the ones that are there. So red and black. So red and black is speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and let's zoom in here. So red and black is speaker here, and we see red and black right there, right, is speaker. And also that gray and black is tender pickups, and that would be left and right. Left is black. And I see over here I've written in left rail, right rail. So red and black as is to gray and black. So we see those two here, right? And then from the engine we have a similar situation. The one that's got the white on it is actually the gray. Well, it's the non-black, so that would be the red. I don't know why I didn't put red on there, but whatever. And I'll double check on that too before we hook it up, right? Because that would be a direct short if that was wrong. So we'll work on that. And then we've got the motor. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the that's why. Here's the red and black, right? Which is right and left rail. And then here's the motor. And so I didn't have any gray and orange. So I've got a white with black, which is the gray, and then the yellow and red, which makes orange. So there's the two motor leads, and there's the left and right. So the left and right leads there. So I'm going to cut that out, and we're going to do the rail leads first. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me cut these connectors off, because we're not going to need them, are we? No. All right, and and it's done. Okay, don't lose that. Don't lose the tape. Don't lose the tape. No, don't lose the tape. Okay. And soldering irons warming up. We don't need these two anymore, so we cut that off, right? And we need to affix our decoder. So we're going to do that with a little bit of double-sided sticky tape. So we big old roll of double-sided sticky tape. So we're not going to need much, but we're going to pick up enough so that it stays in place. And we're going to put that right on the weight. Okay. And we're going to pull that, and we're ready to stick this on, just like that. Push a little bit, and there we go. Perfect, in place. All right, let's go ahead and do some soldering. We have a soldering iron here that's temperature controlled. We also have a little brass. I don't know if you see this. We have these at the shop. A little brass thing that we use to put the soldering iron in. It actually has rosin in the bottom of it. Not necessary because we have rosin core solder, but this is our tip cleaner, right? So we use that. Much better than the sponge with the water on it, because every time you touch it to clean the tip with that, then the temperature changes, and so it gets lower temperature. So we're going to, when we touch the tip at a right angle to that, right, notice we get smoke because, well, it's rosin core. It's rosin core solder. We're going to clean the tip again and put it up for just a minute as we prepare now our right and left leads. Okay, so our right lead, we got all kinds of things hanging out here. So our right lead here, and we need a wire stripper. There's our wire stripper. Here we go. So we're gonna strip this, and again over here it's got the type of wire. So this is really small wire. This is about 26 gauge wire. We're going to do the same thing with the black. Okay. And we're going to do the wires that come from the tender. And you can actually not take as much off here, because when you tin it with the it keeps cutting the wire instead of stripping it. When you take the soldering iron and you apply the soldering iron to it, wow. Okay. Having difficulty here. Let's go up one. Let's try that. There you go. Better. When you apply the solder with the soldering iron, it's hot. It's going to melt back the insulation a little bit. So we're going to pre-tin, right? So we're going to do this and pre-tin all these wires. And what that means is we're going to put a little bit of solder at the end, right, of each one of these. That way they'll solder together easier. Notice I'm not spending a lot of time trying to figure out where all the wires are. I see a bare end and I just put tin on it. Some of these you have to kind of fish them out of the group here. Right. Just put a little solder. This soldering iron still has solder on it from the last trip. I'll clean it and put it up. Now, these also go to the red and black wires of the decoder. So the decoder itself has got left and right rail, and it's the main power for the decoder. One of the reasons why we try to work on that first. Let me find the red and black wires for the decoder and pull those out so we know where they are. Here's the red one. Okay. And the black one is on the opposite side, so here it is. Right there. Okay, now, did I remember right? The black goes to black. Black goes to black. Well, they're both black, but red goes to gray. Okay, so here's our red wire, and our gray wire is coming out on the other side. So we're going to solder that to that, and the red wire coming from the engine, which is right there. So those three are all coming together. This is eventually going to be connected here, so let's get some idea about how long the wires can be. So we got plenty of wire here to connect to this, this, and this. So we're going to cut back. We're going to cut back, and I hope this is where you can see it. We're going to cut back the red wire from the decoder. We're going to give ourselves some room here. I'm going to put like a little loop in it and cut it back here. Ordinarily, you don't want to leave a lot of wire hanging around. In this particular case, we don't have rotating components, so we're not worried too much about it. And we've got, appears to have plenty of room, so we're going to go ahead and just give ourselves a little leeway here with the decoder. Okay, we're going to pretend that. Okay. And if you're an amateur, which many of you are, right? And you're an amateur and you're just learning how to solder, right? A good thing to learn is to tin. That tells you a little bit about whether or not the material that you're soldering to is clean, whether or not it's overly oxidized. People start using wire that doesn't solder well. A good candidate, a good issue for that is things like aluminum, right? Stainless steel, anything other than copper. So many of the wires that we use today are copper, and so we usually don't have a problem with it. Now here's a situation where I'm trying to solder these two wires together, and I can't really hold them. I'm going to add a little solder to my tip, and I'm going to try to put the two wires together with my left hand. Now this is not typically how I would do it, right? So I'm going to show you a little trick here. I'm going to try to twist these around, right? And I'm going to take them this way. I'm going to push them. I'm going to put them on my right. Now I could turn the whole model around, I guess, to do this. And I'm just going to put those two together. I'm just going to hold them in my hand. It's getting very hot, but I'm going to put them in together. And I'm going to just kind of tack them together like that. All right, can you see that? Okay. I'm going to tack them together. And then I'm going to use some shrink tube. Now I've got a lot of shrink tube here. I got different sizes and everything. And I've got little scraps pieces that I've had that I have put aside. And I'm just going to take, I'm going to put shrink tube over top of all of it eventually anyhow. So by taking these two and putting a piece of shrink tube over it, I'm holding them together. All right? So I'm holding them together. Now, this piece of shrink tube that I picked, this piece of scrap that I picked, is too small. It's just not gonna work. So I'm going to have to find a little bit bigger piece. Now, I don't want too big of a piece. Let me see. Now that's the same size. I'm picking these out of my little scrap bin here. This one will probably work. It's the next bigger size, or close to the next bigger size. So I'm going to cut off a piece like this, and then we're going to thread it through. And already see the solder has loosened up, but it's going to stay in there long enough for me to pull it through like that. Okay, and now I'm going to take the other wire, which is coming from the engine now, and we're going to hook that together. Now this will be the right rail, so the right rail. And also is going to be power. I'm just going to kind of hold it in the air. Now, if if you're like me and you're older, right, you put your arms down on the table, gives you more stability as you're doing this, and you're using your other hand, putting it down somewhere where you can get stability, so you're not doing this, right, in the air, right? And I'm doing the same thing with the soldering iron, and I'm just touching it, just briefly touching it. Now, it doesn't take but just a second to do that, and the reason is because, well, I pretend it, for one thing. The other thing is I'm using the correct temperature on my soldering iron. It doesn't take much for these little tiny wires to solder together. You don't want to have a huge soldering iron. You don't want to have a 300 watt soldering iron. You don't need it. Okay, and not only that, you'll find that it's more difficult to do that if you have a big soldering iron. So now I'm going to do the black, which should be the left side. Right? So we got a little extra wire there that we don't need. If you're going to start a business and you're going to do a lot of these, then you save the wire. You can use it other times when you need it. All right, so we get that one ready to go, and we have a black wire here we've already pre-tinned that, right? And we pre-tinned the black wire that's coming from the front. Now notice that the other one, the gray wire, came from the back, and so we did this one this way. This one we're going to do like this with the two wires, the one from the engine and the one from the front truck of the tender. We're going to do those two together this way. And again, you want to stay with whichever way the wires will be in the engine. You don't want to go against the grain, if that means anything to you. Try to go with the orientation of the locomotive and the shell and the wires and how they would be after you put the shell on and the way they bend. And so there's a little bit of mechanics involved in here. This piece of shrink tube is being obstinate. That's your new vocabulary word today. Obstinate means it's not behaving well. Not behaving well. Okay, so now we're going to put that in. It was a day when there was the Reader's Digest and Word of the Month. So I would read those, the Reader's Digest Word of the Month. We don't see that much anymore. We get into, now it's emojis. What emoji do you have? Now you don't have to learn how to read anymore. You don't even have to spell. I get a lot of emails and messages where people don't spell anymore. Drives the English teachers of the world, drives them nuts. I put this piece of tape on here, and that was so that I could remember what wire coming from the engine was the black or the right rail, but it's kind of in my way at this point. Okay, so now I got it out of the way, and I'm able to pull back the shrink tube. All right, now we're ready. And the black wire coming from the decoder now. I'm going to marry that to that group. And making sure that that wire is tinned. I don't remember, it doesn't look like it's tinned, so we're going to tin it. Oh, that's the other thing too, is again, if you got your wires tinned, they go together quicker, faster, right? Because they've already got solder on them. You've already made sure that they will solder. In some cases like this one, we're going to almost preheat it too as we're going. That makes them solder faster. Being obstinate here. Okay. Now I got a problem because this one doesn't want to stay where I've got it. So now I'm going to, you can't always do this, but I'm going to rotate my work. Okay. I'll rotate my work. Now I got wires on top of wires on top of wires, but I'm going to rotate my work so that I can hold this with my left hand. Well, that's not going to work, is it? Okay. I have to rotate everything, engine and the whole thing. You can see where this kind of work, like doing this, can be a problem if you're using a G scale. If you're trying to do this on G scale, or you're trying to do it on O scale, even an S scale. So the larger scales, to rotate an engine to do this is more difficult. And I'm just trying to stay within your view here. And we just touch that, and that should. Again, it has plenty of solder on it because we pre-tinned those. Okay. Okay, and it's done. Now you want to make sure that your shrink tube is not too close to the place where you've got it, or else it will pinch up. And look what happened. See, that's exactly what happened to me. See, the shrink tube started to pinch up over here because it got hot where the shrink tube was. Okay, so I'm going to try to pull it through and see if it'll work. Whoop, it's not going to work because see, the solder joint's coming loose already. Now, it's kind of there, but kind of not. All right, so let's try it again. Yes, I know. I'm not perfect. All right, so now that it came apart, I'm going to go ahead and take that shrink tube off because that's not going to work for us. We need to cut this end off that already shrank. It'll work for us, but it's just going to be shorter. Okay, put it back on. And actually, if I put it on the other side, I can put it down farther. Okay. Okay, now let's go ahead and put this over top of it. If we can. There we go. Oops. Too far. Right there. We cut it a little bit and cut it a little bit too much. Okay. We need our heat gun. I'm gonna go ahead and melt the shrink tube. Okay, we're gonna do that one, and then we got the red one. Where's the red one? What happened to the red one? Is that red or is that orange? I think that's the, oh, here's the red one. Alrighty then, we're good to go with that. And supposedly the only other thing we need to do is hook up the speaker. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, so we got a red and black coming up from the bottom, and this in fact is for the speaker wires, and they just go to the two purple. So we're going to go ahead and cut those. Excuse me. having hiccups or something. And this is speakers. And so we're going to put those wires on. Doesn't take much. We're going to tin those. And we're going to put them to the purple wires on the back, which are the speaker wires. So we've got two purple wires on the back. We've got a brown and a green. And the two purple go to the speaker. So they don't need to be very big, so we're just going to cut them there and there. Come on. And we're actually not going to use the brown and the green. And because we're not going to use the brown and the green, guess what? We're going to cut those almost completely off. We're not going to cut them totally off, but we're going to cut them almost completely off. We're going to leave a bit. And then again, if you can either save the wire or throw it out. If you're just starting out, you probably want to save it a little bit. If you're like me, I've got drawers and drawers of this, and so I'm going to have to. So this is really small wire coming out of this decoder. This is 28 gauge wire, as you can see by the wire strippers. And again, we're going to tin these wires. Sometimes you might want to. Well, I'm off the page here, aren't I? Sorry. Okay. I'm off the page. All right, so here's the two purple wires, right? And I just tinned those two, right? I tinned the red and the black wire, which are actually from the speakers, right? And now we're just going to put them together. Now, in this case, I can use this smaller shrink tube because these wires are tiny, right? And it's just going to be a one-to-one connection. Now you can either do them straight on to each other like this, right? Like we did the other ones. Straight on to each other like this, right? Or if you want to save yourself some time, you can just take them like this and twist them together. In other words, we have plenty of space here, and none of these wires are actually going to move. So it's a whole lot easier to just twist them together and solder them together like this, and then put a cap over top of them. Okay, so solder those two together like that. All right, solder these two together like this. Now I'm showing you a couple different techniques here. I'm not. This is all going to be inside of this tender, and so there's not a lot of worry about where the wires go or how they are positioned inside of if you're doing this inside of a locomotive, you'd want to be more careful, and so it would dictate whether or not they're straight on or whether they're twisted. And again, I know I say these things more than once, so I say again, but this may be the first time you've heard this. The mechanical part of this is also important. You have to make room inside of these little engines for where the wires go. And like in this case, right, again, this is easy to just take this and put a piece of shrink tube over the top of it. Notice that this insulation is kind of in the way. I'll cut it off, but I'm careful that I don't cut the wire when I do that, right? So we're going to Put this one on top of that. Right, and it fits nicely. We're going to do the same thing on the other one, and then we're going to hit it with the heat gun. Or in this case, it's a hair dryer. Yeah. Yeah, you can use a hair dryer. You don't have to buy some expensive heat gun. Yeah. Give it a second to start. You'll see the tube start to deform. That's when you know it's shrunk around the metal. Now, be careful that you don't, when you're using heat guns, that you don't use it on the decoder. So I'm touching the decoder now. It's not hot, but you could easily point it downwards like this and get the decoder so hot that you'd ruin the decoder. Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's a no-no. Interestingly enough, now we've got power, right? We've got power coming in, and we've got the speaker hooked up. We actually could turn this on and get sound out of it. I'm not going to do that at this point, but I could try that.